when you process these feelings, these emotions as a child and seeing and growing up in that in your household, how now do you teach kids to process their feelings so they now could work towards joy, love, harmony, abundance, fruitfulness? How does that work now with what you have experienced and helping others maintain their greatest wellness?
It's really, so I had my father as an example, I had myself as an example, and I had my former husband as an example. And when examining all these different aspects of my lifetime, I could see that there are two ways that most people respond to painful feelings. They either entangle themselves in them and make it part of who they are. So I'm an angry man, I'm a grieving widow, or they resist it like I did. So I could see that my father and my former husband were entangled in the story behind their feelings, whereas I was very resistant to the story behind my feelings. So what I learned is that when we can experience our feelings from a space of neutrality as a witness, then we are not pushing them away and we are not grabbing hold of them. So the biochemistry of our body's reaction to a feeling lasts about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, unless we get caught up in the story. And the caught up in the story is either entangling in it or resisting it. So when we can get our minds out of it and just allow the feeling, then we process it. And I didn't have this tool as a child. I now have it. What that looks like is you feel the feeling, you name the feeling, and then you allow the feeling. And it sounds simple, but when it's a painful feeling, the resistance comes up and you just say, look, it's okay for me to feel this right now. It's not about the event or the circumstances. It's about how you feel about the circumstances. So it's giving yourself permission to feel the way you feel.
I love it. You triggered my thinking, and I'm going to paint a very quick metaphor for our audience as to what Angela just had described. She's talking about the story, and then she's talking about feelings or what happened. So if you paint two circles in front of you and you put them together, they overlap. So you put them really close and they overlap. You have the story and then you have the feeling or what happened. If you separate the two circles, now they're separate. You have your story and then you have what happened or the feeling. From what I'm understanding that Angela's saying is we get caught up in the story.
Yep.
We get caught up in that. What we may have to think about is what happened and then give it the meaning or change our meanings as to that so we can create a lifestyle or a different feeling, a different belief, and change or transform our situation. Am I somewhat on the same path with you?
Yes, you are. It was a beautiful illustration. Thank you so much. There is a piece that I haven't talked about yet. And so that feel, name, allow, that is definitely embedded in my books because I know how important it is. Feelings are energy. And when we grab onto it or push it away, then the energy gets stuck. So it's really important to just allow that energy to flow. And it's amazing how quickly that feeling does just leave if we're not caught up in the story. And so I remember I was talking to a woman, she had her best friend's son had died 2 days before, and she was at work. And she was barely holding herself together. And we're having this conversation. And I said, look, go in the bathroom and feel it. Give yourself permission to feel. It's okay. You're going through a lot, and give yourself permission to be human and experience this grief. And she was like, oh my God, yeah. And just that conversation was enough for her to complete our interaction. And so, we don't think about giving ourselves permission to feel, but that is one of the key concepts in emotional freedom, is just allowing ourselves to feel what we feel. But the
I
other
love that you.
oh
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh
The
just
other aspect.
the other aspect, you talked about shifting perspectives. And that is a whole nother level of teaching that is
Oh,
touched on in the book, because we are handed perspectives by others. So by the time we're 30, 40, 50 years old, we've been given the perspective of our parents and our teachers and our religious leaders and our coworkers and our bosses, and all these rules that describe the world as they see it. And it's not necessarily the world as we see it. And so one of the ways I talk about shifting perspectives, I have to, bring my dad into this again and say, there was a time when I was 4 or 5 years old, and he was drunk and in a rage and looming over me and telling me I wasn't worth the dirt under his feet. Now, as a 4-year-old, he is the authority. And I believe everything he says. It's truth. And so it becomes a truth about me. But I can revisit this in my adult years. And I can make it a picture on a screen where I watch the drunken adult screaming at the 4-year-old little girl. And I can see the innocence of the 4-year-old little girl. And I can see that everything coming from him is telling me exactly who he is at that moment. And in that way, I can imagine myself, the adult, entering the screen, picking up the little girl and telling her the truth about the situation. And that is one of the ways that we can start letting go of the perspectives that others gave us, by just revisiting it as an adult and seeing the truth.
right. So what I'm hearing is a lot of perception of our, whatever we perceive, it's that's true for us, right? So my perception could be true for me, but like you just said, but Jeff, what's the truth? Even though I perceive this, that's true, but Jeff, what's the truth? And if I think on those lines, my brain automatically opens up some other options, some other possibilities as to what my true is. Because most of the time, my true is a lie. And I know that because I read a lot on Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 Agreements and the Voice of Knowledge and all that stuff. And if you haven't read any of Don's books, I highly suggest, I'm talking to the audience, pick up a book and read some of his writings. It's amazing. But perception, sometimes you've heard the analogy, is everything. I just want to go back because you used the word allowing us and giving us permission to feel. And I thought that's a beautiful statement. But I'm also going to say maybe, and I want you to take it from what I'm going to say, we don't give ourselves the permission because maybe, this is a question, maybe we think we don't deserve to feel a certain way out of maybe ridicule, out of embarrassment, out of like, feel that I'm going to be downplayed, I'm going to be ostracized.
Yeah,
So
not accepted.
Not accepted. We're going to be unworthy, not loved. We're going to be whatever. So does maybe the feeling of self-worth have a lot to do with what you're saying?
Yes, it does. And so when you think about it, when I was in my marriage for 32 years, I was not valuing myself. I wasn't valuing my needs. I was putting his needs before mine. And self-worth, self-value is a key ingredient. This is why in my books, I try to tell kids that they're magical and their magic is love. And so they can change the world with their love. And it's one of the things that I'm very apt to teach is self-love, because, and I talk about what is self-love. Is it self-care? You know, I eat right, I exercise, I go get massages. How nice. But that's self-care. And that's an aspect of self-love. But what true self-love is radical acceptance of yourself. And that means, can you look in the mirror and catalog what you see is right instead of notice everything you see that you don't like? Can you,
I love it.
Can you quash your self-criticism? Can you, when you say I am, do you use critical words or do you use uplifting words? Can you replace the critical with uplifting? That is an aspect of self-love.
Powerful, because here it comes, Angela, here it comes. No, because you are triggering my intelligence. I am, I think from my heart, but I talk from my brain. Self-care. I love that. I know for a fact my self-care was nothing that I was given. And I want the audience and our listeners to hear this. So I'm going to say that nobody was given their self-care.
Nope.
My self-care was something I had to claim. I claimed it. And by claiming it, I had to take on a lot of pain and agony, because it takes work to do exactly what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So the question I had, which I totally just forgot, and I do that at times. The question I have then is, I'm gonna throw out 4 words. Tell me how they maybe interplay with what you're talking about. Resourcefulness, resilience, acceptance, and vulnerability. Resourcefulness, resilience, acceptance, and vulnerability. How can those 4 words, they're all emotions, how can they play into your story and gift our listeners some possibilities.
So they are so important in my story. You know, the first time I wrote a chapter in a book called Ignite Your Life for Women, and it was about forgiveness. I had to be very vulnerable in that. I had to accept what happened. And it's just all those aspects are really important. At the beginning of your show, you talk about curiosity. That's another hugely important aspect. And I would add playfulness, because when we add things like curiosity and playfulness, then when our computer goes haywire, which it happens, we can, with curiosity, say, well, I wonder how I'm going to get this done. Or we can become resistant to what's happening. We can playfully try something, and if it doesn't work, okay, it's a learning experience. And that is that whole idea of failure is something I would love to eliminate from schools, because they tell us in school, this is right, this is wrong. But there could be 5 different pathways to achieve the answer. And who says one pathway is better than the other? So let's encourage our children to explore, be curious, try new things, let them fail, because every failure is an opportunity to learn.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
that takes a kind of playful attitude to do that.
Yeah. You're talking about, failure, and I'm using the word belief. Our limited beliefs cause us to maybe think one way. And if we maybe look at other options by asking maybe one question to every belief that we have, like the question would be, what else could this mean?
Oh
So
boy, I love that.
Yeah, if I have a belief, I'm in school failing, I could ask myself, Jeff, what else could this mean? And now my brain opens up 4 other options. I could actually change my belief and support it with something better. So,
and the fire that happened in my life is such a great example of that, because I can believe that my life is ruined. I lost my house in a fire. Or in my case, I believe that the fire woke something up in me that caused me to start this path that led me to where I am now.
Oh my gosh, beautiful. That's a great segue. Because of time, it's a great segue to ask you this one final thought for our listeners. What is Angela Legh's vision, ideal vision?
You are the first person who's ever asked me that. Okay, this is truly my vision. A world where every child knows how to deal with their most painful feeling. So they do not choose alcohol or drugs or suicide or self-harming. They don't choose anorexism or bulimic.
Bulimic,
yeah. They choose to just feel their feelings. And so all that money that goes into drug abuse prevention, all that money that goes into alcoholism and prevention of alcoholism now can be spent on housing and support of the people. That's my vision. There's no alcoholics. There's no substance abuse.
I love the vision. I mean, I'm on that pathway. I'm not addicted to any drugs or alcohol. However, I live as a person diagnosed with bipolar. And so my demons are a little different. However, everything that you had mentioned are coping steps for me for my greatest wellness. And that's what I teach and I bring to so many hundreds a month of people. So I want to first say thank you so much for being on the show and giving us some insights as to your beliefs and your values. And I look forward to have you on again. Where can we find you? Tell us where people, if they want to get to you, they want to know more about you, where do they go? And what type of projects do you have going on, maybe?
So what I have are my website, which is angelalegh.com. So it's Legh, Legh, angelalegh.com. And on that website, parents can find resources. There are little guides, PDF downloads that are guides for emotional mastery or how to soothe anxiety in children, or a suicide prevention guide. All those are free and downloadable. Then my children's books teach the tools that we talked about in today's talk. And those books are available on Amazon, but you can get to them from my website. And then I have a online course that takes a deep dive into the things we talked about today: shifting perspectives, facing your emotions, adding curiosity and playfulness to your day. And that's also available on my website.
No, that's great. Well, just so you know, I'm going to put everything in the show notes, all your contacts, all your links. So everybody who listens to this show can go and get in touch with you. They can give us the thumbs up and some comments also. But I do want to give an outreach and say thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the show. And to learn a little more about me, you can go to my website as well. It's Rome Training, Rome like the city, rometraining.com. And you could also go to Facebook and my Facebook group. You can join at Corporate Crazies in an Imperfectly Perfect World. So yeah, it's a face group with some significance. So I entice you to get there. One of the last comments I want to make, and I think that Angela will appreciate this, is, some of our best therapists have 4 legs. And I think everybody knows what that means, because if you're really down in the dumps and you're not feeling well, get yourself a pet, a fish, a plant, something, something to soothe you, to make you feel good. And so until next time, I want you to live large, love life, and thanks again for listening. You guys were great. And thanks again, Angela. You were wonderful on this.